Welcome to the Shock Your Potential podcast with your host, Michael Sherlock. We all have potential, but sometimes we need inspiration to get us to our peak performance. Whether you are starting out in your career, ready to move up the corporate ladder, or taking the leap into entrepreneurship, Michael's guests provide powerful tools and resources to shock your potential. Shock Your Potential is a global professional development training company committed to your unique journey. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com. Listen in to today's expert.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Shock Your Potential. And I am your host, as always, Michael Sherlock. This month during Mindful May, we are talking about how we can all use a little help and guidance to make sure that we're taking care of our mental health. And my guest today is going to talk about this from her own perspective. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about who she is and what she does. And Karina Kantas is an award-winning author of fiction. She has 14 published books to date, and she writes in all kinds of genres like young adult, erotica, thriller, fantasy, MC thriller, horror, dystopian. All right, dystopian. I've got actually one of those in my brain as well that I know can come out. Dark romance and mafia thriller and sci-fi. She's a writer of all trades. She also runs Author Assist, which offers affordable services to independent authors. And she's a radio host and has 2 podcasts. She loves helping authors get seen and heard on many different platforms. And she's from the UK, but she lives in the beautiful island of Corfu, Greece, an island I have not been to yet, but someplace else I want to go in the land of Greece. Karina, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Michael.
Oh, and I know we were talking before we started taping that you guys have been under tight lockdown, and I'm hoping that the world keeps turning because it's possible we might be going back to roads this summer, my husband and I. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed between travel opening up and vaccines are coming that maybe the world will be turning again for travel.
Well, I know over here they're not going to allow people off the plane unless they have like a certificate to say they've had the vaccine. And I know we're opening our borders in June. But the reason our numbers have been so low when it comes to cases and deaths is that the Prime Minister acted strict and really quickly before any other European country did. And that's kept our numbers low. And even in Corfu, when we were free for many months without one case, we still had to keep to the guidelines of Greece's lockdown. Otherwise, you could get fined up to €300 if you're found outside without permission.
Yep, that's some pretty big incentive to stay inside.
Yeah.
Well, Karina, I gave a little bit of your bio and update, but tell us a little bit more in your own words about you, your business, and how you help your clients to shock their potential.
Well, I started off writing about 27 years ago. I had no idea what I was doing. I self-published a book. There was no Kindles at the time. So I self-published my own book at Vanity Press, which I don't advise anyone to ever go near because I got burnt just like many other authors. They take advantage of you. So you learn by your mistakes. And I didn't want that happening to any other authors. So after 27 years and learning how to promote and market myself correctly from people that I've spoken to, what I've learned over the years, webinars and conferences and everything, I wanted to give back to these authors that were so desperate to publish their book, but then they got stuck and they didn't know what to do next. Their book's published, what do I do next? That's where I come in. And instead of just being a PA or a VA and helping them market and promote their book, I actually teach them. I do one-on-one teaching where I make sure that they learn these tools rather than hiring me over and over again to do the same thing. They learn how to do it themselves. So when their next book comes out, they know what they're doing and they don't need to hire someone again. It's really important that I can give back what I've learned to authors that really need it and will take the time to learn it themselves. I mean, if they're like some of my clients who are full-time best-selling authors, then they haven't got time to do any promotion or marketing of their how many books. And so I work for them full-time and I'll do that. And and we've been together for years, me and my full-time clients. So that's no problem. But with a new client, I really want to teach them what they need to know so they don't have to keep on hiring people. And I work from home. I don't work on an hourly rate. If I'm online, I am working. And so the computer goes on about 10 o'clock in the morning and it's turned off at 10 at night. But I'm still around online if any of my clients need me, have questions or anything. So I'm basically working nearly 24/7. Weekends, though, I do keep for myself because I have my own books, 14 of them, and I need time to write, to edit, and to promote my own books. So the weekends are my own, and then 5 days a week I work for my clients with Author Assist.
Wow, you are going 24/7.
I am going 24/7, but yeah, I think I'm a workaholic, but it keeps me busy and I don't have to think about other things. And I just want to get my clients' books out to as many people out there. And so I do my media programs as well, my radio show, which is actually on later tonight. We go live worldwide once a month. And I have 2 podcasts where I do Behind the Pen, and I talk with authors about their journey, about their books, and that's turned into a podcast. So I cover all mediums to make sure I can get as much promotion out of about their books and about them as an author.
It's amazing. It's an amazing time in the world now that anyone can publish. They can self-publish. They can get help from as little bit from editing to promotion to you name it. And it was interesting because I worked, and you learn the difference between working with maybe a vanity publisher or kind of like a hybrid publisher or self-publishing. There's all these different levels. And so with my first version or first edition of my first book, I worked with a similar kind of company. It was okay. It was, it cost me more than it should have. And it, didn't give me the greatest results. But what I learned is no matter what, and actually before I did my second edition, I actually had an offer from a traditional publishing firm. And when I was considering actually going with like a hybrid kind of publisher, which is what I work with now, and the contract with the traditional publishing house versus this hybrid was so vastly different that I said, I don't even want to work with a traditional publishing firm because you lose a lot of your own rights, even with a traditional publishing firm, but you're still responsible for all your own marketing and promotion. That's coming out of your pocket.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, some of the big boys. Yeah. Some of the big boys get you on, on a bigger stage, but that doesn't mean that they're going to, be there in the trenches with you.
Yeah, I mean, to get your foot in the door through the big 5, you need to have a big social media presence. They want to know how many followers you have, how many likes you have. And if you don't have a name for yourself, you're unlikely, it doesn't matter how great your book is, you're unlikely to get your foot through the door, which now it doesn't really matter because of the hybrid publishers. You basically you separate the work. You bring something to the table and they bring the other part to the table.
Yes.
You actually end up with more royalties that way than you would with a traditional publisher. And you get to keep your rights as well. So I get thumbs up for a hybrid. I'm self-published and I have a contract with a hybrid publisher for my fantasy duology. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's really amazing, especially about the royalties. And, I found just the perfect partner for me and, the everything from their design work for my covers and back covers and, the way they edit, it just fits so nicely with what I want to accomplish. But it was so eye-opening to me to realize, you if you're going to work even with one of the big 5, to make $1 million on your books, you basically have to sell 1 million books. So you're kind of getting $1 a book.
That's what you get. That's honestly what you get, $1 a book, even as a self-published author. But that's not why we do it. We do it because we have a story to tell. We want people to read our work. We want to see the reviews, of course. It'd be great if we had hundreds and hundreds of sales every month. But if that doesn't happen, as long as you keep on writing and getting those words out, and people are enjoying your book, then that's what matters.
Yeah, I agree. I actually have 6 books in motion, and I was telling you before we started taping. One is my first actual novel, but the others are that are in motion of some various way. I've been so busy, strangely enough, even after the pandemic, and all my speaking gigs were canceled or put on hold. But I've been working towards this mindset that somehow in the next couple months, I'm actually going to take a week and I'm going to just, kiss my husband on the cheek and say goodbye. I'll see you in a week. And I'll lock myself in some, cabin somewhere, and I'm going to write to my heart's content. Just bring me some wine and
Yeah,
throw me a pizza every once in a while, and I'll be good.
perfect. That's what you need. It takes a lot of time, and it is a lonely business, and you can't write when kids are running around, you can't write when there's people in the room. You need to be alone to allow everything to come out. You need to get into the zone. It's no good forcing yourself to write. You need to be in the zone, because when you're in the zone, everything flows out and the characters start talking to you, and you start
Mhm.
listening to what they tell you and where to
Yeah.
go, and the story writes itself. And that is actually the easy part, is
Yeah.
writing the story. What
Yeah.
comes after that's the hard part.
It is. It's actually because, like I told you also with my novel, I actually wrote the entire, construct in my head. I could tell somebody the entire story
Yeah,
from start to finish within a day of having it come to my head. And I jotted it all. I took time I kind of bullet pointed it out. But then the writing of it is where then you got to get all the richness, and you get to, sit in that character's head. And so I've only put a third of it actually on, paper, quote unquote. And you really have to be in the right mental space to do it. And I haven't been there for a couple months. So I'm very eager to get back to it because I miss my characters, but I miss
yeah,
being able to get to the finish.
yeah. The same with the fantasy I was telling you about. I watched Lord of the Rings. It was an hour's journey to get back home from the cinema. By the time I got home, that was it in my head. The characters, the plot, the beginning, the end. And unlike some books, when you have an idea, this stayed, this stuck. Everything that I thought of in that hour is in that book. Nothing changed, nothing deviated. And it was magical the way it worked. It was just, I've always been a pantser. I've always had an idea, and then I start writing, and I don't plot. The plotting is in here, same as
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. I wanted to really thank you because I know you're going to share some very personal things for this month of May, where I'm talking about it being Mindful May. I'm trying to make sure that we all recognize that, especially after a year in a pandemic and a lot of isolation, a lot of fear, but not just those things, every day around us, maybe even us ourselves. But if it's not us directly, it's somebody around you that you may not recognize. There's people that are in pain. There are people that are suffering. There are people with depression. There's people with mental illness. There are so many people around us in our lives that may be putting on a really good face about, what their life is like, but on the inside, it's not what we may seem. And I know that you have struggled with these things and still do. You have a number of things that keep you really having to walk that balance of taking good care of yourself mentally. So can you just share a little bit about your story with us?
Yeah, sure. I've suffered from depression all my life, right from before being a teen, right through to now as a mother, middle-aged mother. I don't like that word, middle-aged. Um,
A
but
supercharged age.
oh, that's much better. um, so I had a difficult childhood, and I was also bullied through most of my schooling. And so by the time the teens came, I was as low as you can get, ready to ring up the Samaritans, ready to just end it all, because I didn't see any other way out of it, out of the pain, out of feeling alone, out of seeing nothing in front of me. There was just no path for me to follow. And I thank God that I never went that way. I've been on antidepressants. I've had therapies throughout most of my life through this depression. And I was actually seeing a therapist because because I had a really bad bout of depression, and I found out I was pregnant with my first child. And I
Oh,
phoned her
wow.
up and I said, "Oh, guess what? I don't need you anymore." And that kicked me up. That kicked me out of my depression with my first child. Yeah. Um,
Really?
yeah, really. She
Wonderful.
was so happy about it, and never seen her since. Um, but I have serious health conditions. The first one, type 1 diabetes, with lots of complications, unfortunately, started after I moved to Greece 27 years ago, let's say. I'm not good with dates. I was 17 or 18 when I met my husband. He was a barman and I was on holiday. It was
Oh,
like a Shirley Valentine sort of story.
oh,
Yeah, it wasn't. I wish it was an R, but I had a lot of problems, and we broke up, and I left because the mentality over here was very difficult. The language, I felt very alone, even
hmm
though I had my now husband. So that was a really difficult time for me when I actually moved to Greece. But that was the first time I was published because I had nothing to do in the winters. So I decided there's two talents I had, singing and writing. So as I didn't speak any Greek, I thought, right, I'll take to the writing. So I got my first book published when I first moved here. But life was very difficult, and I packed up a couple of times and went home. He couldn't live without me, and he came over to the UK, stayed with me, worked, had saw how I was used to living, so that when I came back here, we made things easier for me. But I developed diabetes type 1. Now, after all those years, it hasn't been so well controlled that it's caused complications. I then had a problem with the thyroid, which, if people don't know, it's a tiny little thing in your
hmm
neck that causes problems with every single part of your body.
Yep.
Everything from the hair right down to the feet.
Yep.
From then, I had fibromyalgia. Now that just knocked me for six. That just stopped. My life went to a standstill. I was in so much pain 24/7. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't walk. I was basically laying on the couch, and that was my life. And I thought I was going to stay like that. I lost all my friends who I couldn't keep going out to keep up with them and go out for wine and cheese like we normally did. And they just stopped
hmm
calling, stopped coming around. And so that was very difficult because I felt very alone. I have some amazing, amazing virtual friends on Facebook that have been there for me from the beginning. So, of course, with all that going on, again, the depression has never gone away. I could be smiling and happy one minute and then start bawling in the next minute. My emotions all over the place and have been for a long time. I take 15, 20 pills every day for so many different. See, fibromyalgia isn't one thing. It's the fibromyalgia is the name of the condition, but the
Yes. Yeah.
condition affects maybe your whole body with different things, from problems with memory, the chronic pain, the chronic insomnia, depression, problems with the heat and feeling cold.
Yep.
And the list just goes on. There's just so much to do with fibro, and there isn't a cure, and there isn't a
Yep.
special magic pill. So
Yep.
every single symptom, I was taking something for everything. For restless leg syndrome, which is where your leg jumps up. Well,
hmm
that's gone from my legs to my hands. And without the medication that I'm on, which is actually for the same people that have, I can't remember that condition where they move a lot,
Mm.
um,
Oh,
where they
like
shake a lot.
Parkinson's?
Parkinson's. So it's the same medication for
Yeah.
Parkinson's, but it's for restless leg syndrome.
Yep.
Um, Even if I'm an hour late taking that medication, my legs just won't stop twitching, and it gets to the stage where it's so painful because Of course, you can't sleep.
Yeah.
How can
Well,
you
and
sleep
we
when your
talked about
legs?
that. And we talked about that before. I mean, we were laughing about you working 24/7, but I know you've also struggled a great deal with insomnia, despite the fact that many of your medications should be knocking you out.
They should. I mean, we've gone through the doctors. I've got a fantastic over here. I'm very lucky to have the team I have. But we go through from one medicine after another to try and find something that works. And even the ones I'm taking now, we're saying, well, maybe we'll start weaning myself off it to try
Mm.
something new because it's just not working. He's basically said the medication I'm taking for my insomnia, which is a chronic insomnia, should knock out an elephant. And yet I'm still getting 2 hours sleep if I'm
Yeah.
lucky. And I go 72 hours without sleep. And then I'm
Oh my
just
God.
zombified. I'm zombified.
Yeah.
And then I do crash. I crash for maybe 5, 6 hours straight through. But I see positive things about everything. And the positive side of it is my business because most of my clients are in the US. And so when I should be sleeping, they're awake. So I can do all my work because I'm wide awake as well.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the chronic insomnia, and I didn't realize this until I spoke with my neurologist, was causing mental problems.
Yes. It will
Um,
after a time.
it's been going on for 5, 10 years now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no, I had no idea. I was just going through every day and just accepting everything.
Mhm.
And I had these new things happen and I just accepted it as just part of my health just getting worse. But he said
Mhm.
to me, why didn't you explain this before? And I said, well, I just assumed it was part of fibromyalgia. He went, no, it's because of your chronic insomnia. Basically, what was happening, I was going around the supermarket shopping and I would suddenly blank out, wouldn't collapse, but suddenly everything would go black and within a second it would come back. And it was so scary. And with being diabetic, I spoke with my doctor and she said it's because you're probably getting low in sugar.
Mm.
So then I started carrying my tester around with me. And 3 times that it happened, I tested my blood and it was perfect.
Right.
So if it's not the diabetes, what is causing me? It was terrifying.
I bet.
It was terrifying. It happened anytime. Even when I'm out on my motorcycle, it could happen.
Mhm.
And it was absolutely, yeah, terrifying. And the other thing that kept happening, which is quite funny now I think about it, my family laugh about it, especially my kids, would be talking and they'd ask me something and I would answer them that had nothing to do with what we were talking about.
Mm. Yeah.
And I would suddenly think, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it was all because of not sleeping.
Yeah.
So I had an EG done on
Mhm.
EGG, I think it's called. And I had this funny looking cap put on my head and laid on the bed and he put all these wires on this cap. And he said to me, are you tired? And I went, no. He said, okay, just relax. And he came over again. He said, right, I want you to close your eyes and open them, close your eyes and open them. So we did that a few times. And then when we finished, I think must have been about 45 minutes. When we finished, he says, I need you to come back in a couple of days. I need you to get some sleep and come back in a couple of days because the reading isn't right. It's not right.
Mm.
Something's wrong with the reading. Well, I thought, well, how am I supposed to sleep when I'm suffering from insomnia? So,
Right.
of course, I didn't sleep. And I went back a couple of days and the test was exactly the same. And he says, what's happening is you're awake, your brain is asleep.
Mm.
I said, how can my brain be asleep when I'm laying on the bed thinking about my job, thinking about the next book that I'm writing?
Because
My
it's
brain
trying to
is
protect
awake,
you.
I'm thinking.
Mhm.
But
Mm.
the readings showed the
Mhm.
proof that my brain was sleeping, but I was awake.
And I think, Karina, your story was so many, I mean, obviously there's so many elements here, that show how a couple things that I guess would be my takeaway, as we get near the end is that, Again, you never know what's going on behind anyone else's four walls or behind the end of their noggin. People are suffering from things that we may have no idea. And I think that means we need to give some people a break sometimes, including ourselves. But I
Yeah,
think the other component, because I made the note before we even started taping, is that, when your doctor said, why didn't you tell me about it? Is that, sometimes, yeah, we just figure if there's something I really should know, shouldn't you have told me about it? So we're not always the best at advocating for ourselves with our physicians. And things like fibromyalgia, for instance, there are doctors who for years just didn't believe patients,
still
just
don't
said,
over here in Greece.
there's no proof of it. So I don't know, you're just
Exactly.
crazy. And,
Yeah,
we know more about it now, but I think that, there's still that stigma of, well, if you can't read it on the test, then it, or if you can't check it with the blood, it's not there. I think it's a really great point to remind us all. We have to not only advocate for ourselves, but we have to be aware of what's going on, because when there's a problem, our body is trying to tell us something. It's our, yeah, we've got to
exactly.
listen.
Thank you. Exactly. That's so right. I saw a rheumatologist, and it was her that diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. And I had an amazing team. I had a pain team. I had my diabetics doctor. I had my thyroid doctor. I had an amazing team. And then one of the doctors, my neurologist, left, and I had a new neurologist. And I walked into one of the first appointment, and he says to me, there's some doctors that believe and some doctors that don't. And I looked at him and I went, and you don't, do you? And he went, no, I don't.
Oh,
How can you have a doctor that doesn't believe in your condition that you've had nearly 10 years?
oh,
I never saw him again. I couldn't do
good.
it.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, because there's no point in
But
going to that.
it's still over here. It's not a medical condition over here
Yeah,
like it is in the UK.
yeah.
It's
Drive
not
me
a
crazy.
medical condition. And
Yeah,
like you said, there's no blood test that shows that you have it, because
yeah.
it is one name, fibromyalgia, which actually is a Greek name, which means pain,
Yes.
because it's 24/7 pain, it's constant pain.
Yeah.
My husband's just made an extension to the house to stop me from having to walk up the stairs to where my
Mm,
old bedroom was because of the pain getting up the stairs.
mm. Well, I'm
I
glad you
my
have such a
body's
support
like
system.
my body's like a 80-year-old, and
Mm,
I'm 40, but I've had this 10 years.
mhm.
And my daughter, especially my youngest, she's 11 now. She's been my nurse. She knows all my medications. She knows when I should be taking it. She knows what they're called. She's been forced to grow up very, very quickly and look
Mm.
after her mummy. And I thank God that I have a family like that.
Absolutely.
You
and thank
know,
you for sharing your story, because it's very deeply personal, obviously, but I think it really shines a light on for any of us that, we all have stuff, and we all know people who have stuff, and there's people that do have stuff that we don't know about. Let's just make sure we're kind to ourselves and kind to others. And so, Karina, we're near the end here. I know we'll have all your contact information for anybody who might be interested in, learning more about what you do, working with authors. But just in case somebody wants to look you up right now before looking at the show notes, what's the best way for them to reach you?
at Facebook, I'm on there 24/7. I have an author assist on Facebook, but I'm also there as Karina Kantas author, and my personal page. If anyone wants to message me about what we've talked about, I'm very open and I'm quite happy to discuss. I know that so many virtual people online are going through so much behind closed doors because we talk to one another. And so if
Yeah.
anyone needs and feels like they need to talk, then by all means get in touch with me.
Excellent. Well, before we go, do you have any last words of wisdom or pearls of advice for my listeners and viewers?
Yeah, no matter what you're going through, uh, I got to my lowest point when I was a teen, and everyone says, "How do you do what you're doing now?" Because of how much it's taken and how strong I have to stay. But you have to. You've got to look. You've got to find a positive. Somehow you've got to find the positive out of the negative. And for me, it was doing author assist, keeping busy, helping other people. I finally found my path, what I should have been doing years ago. And I feel like I'm on the right track. And just for anyone that's suffering, especially with the lockdown and feeling isolated, it's going to get better. We may never get back to how we were, but it's going to get better, and we're going to have that social connection again. We're going to be able to hug our family and our relatives again. It's going to happen. And just keep that in your mind, that things will get better.
Amen. I love it. Karina, thank you so much for being with us today, sharing your story, and reminding us of how many more ways we can help each other get through it.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Shock Your Potential podcast. Learn more about us today at shockyourpotential.com, including details on Michael's 2 best-selling books. Tell me more, how to ask the right questions and get the most out of your employees, and sales mixology, why the most potent sales and customer experiences follow a recipe for success. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and like us today.